The felon's era is coming to an end. Let's look into that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you for your likes and your comments. They really do help the channel grow. They get the videos to more people. If you've been hyping the video, which is a new YouTube feature, thank you, thank you, thank you. And just watching the video all the way to the end helps the video go out to more people. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You're the reason why this channel has grown, and I am deeply grateful for that. I am offering my fall 2025 tarot reading class on Patreon. If you're interested in that, the link will be below. You can also email me if you have questions about that at scryingoutloud3 at gmail or scryingoutloud3 at gmail.com. I'll be happy to answer your questions. There's a course syllabi on Patreon that everybody should be able to look at as well. And the description pretty much describes how it's going to go. There's a question and answering type sessions. That's why I'm going to close the class at the beginning of the month, just so that you know each group is kind of at their at a pace, I should say. Okay. So the felon's era is coming to an end. This is very clear to me. In my scrying, I keep getting images of things just not going his way. Both, the era and his life cycle are coming to an end. So, but the era is probably more significant to the world than him. Uh, so we'll look at the Comey indictment. I think that's going to go terrible for him. Jimmy Kimmel went terrible. You know, they thought they had done something there, and now Jimmy Kimmel's back on the air with bigger ratings than ever. Um, and then we have the Epstein petition in the House. We'll look at that to see if that'll actually come up for a vote. I know Mike Johnson's probably trying to talk people out of that, trying to get people to redact the discharge signatures, but we'll take a look at that. I don't think they will. And I kind of thought they would, but the more I scry on it, the more I think it's not going to happen. The felons asked the Supreme Court to rule on birthright citizenship or to let him start enforcing it. We'll look at that. The images that I've got suggest that he'll lose horribly on this one. And Vance becomes toxic. We'll look at that as well. So let's start with the Comey indictment. So, former FBI Director James Comey was indicted for perjury, essentially, just a couple days before the statute of limitations were to run out. You know, one of the prosecutors resigned because they didn't think this indictment should go forward. The grand jury didn't even indict on all counts. They only indicted on two of the three counts. Nobody wants to prosecute this case. It already looks like, you know, the person in charge doesn't know what she's doing. So, um, when I was scrying on this, I think this case gets dismissed way before it goes to trial by a judge, not by the DOJ dropping the charges, but by the judge saying, no, there's not a case here. So let's just see if that's what comes to pass. I think this happens in fairly quick order, as far as the courts go. So, probably give it a year. The courts work slow most of the time. Um, what do we need to know about the Comey indictment? Definitely politically motivated. Um, as our beloved Vice President Harris said, are you effing kidding me, DOJ? So we all know that this stinks. And what the felon doesn't realize is things like this and Jimmy Kimmel are what are going to bring him down. Um, People don't like it. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of mixed feelings about James Comey as in the way he handled Hillary's emails and all that stuff. And I'm neither making a positive statement for him or against him. I'm just saying that the indictment is not correct. Uh, yeah, we get judgment right away. I think the judge that oversees this case is going, it's probably already passed judgment, but eventually the charges are just going to be dismissed. The judge is going to make it happen because there is no case here. It's just stinks. The Knight of Swords here about swift movement. It's like they were doing this really quickly before the statute of limitations ran out. There were reasons why the previous DOJs didn't bring charges. James Comey's not a Democrat. He is a Republican. And Biden's DOJ could have certainly indicted him if they wanted to, and they didn't. Trump's DOJ could have indicted him the first time around, and they didn't. Um, and there are reasons, uh, because there's nothing here. The Two of Swords, they're just shooting in the dark, so to speak. Probably shouldn't use the word shooting lately, but that's what it is. It's just a long shot. There's going to be a lot of arguing about this with the Five of Wands. I think, it doesn't really matter almost what the evidence is. It's the statements that he should be indicted, the truth telling Pam Bondi to indict him. This is not how the justice system works. It's not how it's designed. Uh, the felon himself would be a material witness in this case, as the way I see it, as a motivation for why the indictment came down. Um, this really is the not the first, but a pretty big impeachable offense as well, targeting private citizens. I think this is gonna really sour a lot of people. The King of Wands. We just need somebody to speak eloquently about it. This is like a J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, a Pete Buttigieg, and Vice President Harris. Really pointing out exactly how dangerous this type of stuff is. We get the Queen of Wands discernment and prosecutorial type energy, but nobody wanted to take this case. Every prosecutor said there wasn't a case. They fired or they resigned because he was going to get fired because the previous guy didn't want to bring the case. Probably nobody in the district wants to prosecute the case. So it looks really bad for the DOJ. We get the Ten of Cups, families reunions, and celebrations. I think, you know, in this day and age of Netflix and all the streaming services and all of these true crime documentaries where we see how easy it is for somebody that is not guilty to be found guilty, people are more skeptical than ever of the jury system. They're more skeptical than ever of law enforcement, right or wrong. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's the case. So people are already skeptical. And then this just really stinks. And the only people that are probably thinking it's a good thing are the people that are the brainwashed cults. So, I just don't think that it works out well. It doesn't follow logic and consistency the way the King of Swords is. It just doesn't follow any rules. And then we get the felon himself appearing in his own reading. So we got three of the four kings here. So judgment will be made. It'll be swift, it'll be eloquent, and it will definitely involve some sort of critique of the felon and his involvement in this case. You and I and other families were already skeptical of law enforcement. Uh, I think the judge points this out for some reason. Um, and the truth was that even if it goes to trial, they're not going to get a conviction. And even if they got a conviction, Comey would probably most likely get probation or nothing as a judgment. So it doesn't really make any sense. There's a lot of fighting over this already. Fighting over whether the law is being enforced consistently and with logic, which it's not. There are questions about why this was done just before the statute of limitations is about to run out. And I think people are going to use their discernment. I don't think this poll's popular. It'll be interesting to see. YouGov usually puts out a poll every week or two, and they ask, questions, like your opinion of Charlie Kirk, for example. That's where that negative opinion of Charlie Kirk came even after he was murdered, that I quoted. Uh, I bet you this comes back with a negative idea that he shouldn't have been indicted. Underneath, we have the Nine of Pentacles. Yeah, and Comey's going to win the Six of Wands, the victory card. They're just delusional to think, the Seven of Cups, they're just delusional to think that anything like this would work. And it's going to be good that this happens because this will prevent other more crazy indictments. I wouldn't be surprised if John Bolton gets indicted before Comey's thing gets dismissed, but um, it's the public doesn't like this, they just don't. Okay, the Supreme Court the felon asked the Supreme Court to let him stop birthright citizenship. I think they're going to say no, but let's just take a look. I think it might be unanimous. It's probably 7-2, just because Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito have issues for entertainment purposes only. It's just a tarot reading. I could be right, I could be wrong. I could see them siding with him, but I could also see them not, just to try to preserve dementia at the bottom of the deck, the Five of Swords. This is a very crazy thought. So, there's like the system's not set up, one, to enforce it, and two, it's pretty plainly written that this is the way things were because of the 14th Amendment. So so I mean, if there isn't birthright citizenship, where does it go back to? Think about all the indigenous people to the North American and the United States. If their parents weren't citizens, then they're not citizens, and so on and so forth. It doesn't make any sense. So it would need to be something that Congress should handle, not just a whimsical decision. But I think the 14th Amendment, I think it's pretty clear to me. So what do we need to know about this? Yeah, I think logic, consistency, interpretation, just reading the document the way it's written, the amendment that was ratified by the states and as part of the Constitution now. There's things going on behind the scenes that we can't see. The High Priestess. This does make me wonder if Alito and Thomas don't write a dissent that they should even hear this case. But justice is going to happen. And we all know the right answer here. The right answer is this has been the law of the land since the 14th Amendment was passed. So, in the 1860s or 70s. So there's a lot of protection here. The star card, these all look very good. The center of the reading with the Eight of Cups. This is the Supreme Court walking away from the felon. It might even be 8-1. Maybe Thomas is the only one that dissents here. There was they were very skeptical of this in the beginning, and then they skirted around it by saying, "Oh, well, judges shouldn't be allowed to make national injunctions to his executive orders. There needs to be a class action lawsuit." And now there's a class action lawsuit, and there's an injunction nationwide on this now. So I think, the Ten of Swords, complete and utter downfall, the end of a dark cycle. Yeah, it's inevitable that they just don't follow suit here. And the full card, it'll be a refreshing change of pace to have the Supreme Court not only do the right thing, but actually really smack it down. And we get death and rebirth. This is the end of the era that I keep talking about, that I keep seeing. And while there will be physical death as well, it's also the death of the ideas. So the Supreme Court will be logic and consistent. They're going to turn their backs on the administration, and this will be a refreshing change with the death card here. It's inevitable that they turn their backs on him and that justice happens. So this looks really quite good. We do have things going on behind the scenes that we can't see. So, there could be things wrong with Alito and Thomas, because I'm just very curious that they might have ulterior motives. This is, again, another thing that's kind of, another nail in the coffin, so to speak, the complete and utter downfall that will come to him. The country's got protection from him, and this will be, a refreshing ruling. Yeah, we get emotional new beginnings here. People will be very pleased that this happens. Messages being sent. And we get the moon card. This is sort of the ending of the volatility of these crazy ideas being pushed forward in the courts. Just like his lawsuit against the New York Times was already thrown out, this is going to start to happen more and more. Okay, what's going on with Epstein in the House? So, as part of the rules of the House, if 218 people sign a petition, a discharge paper, there has to be a vote on something, so the speaker can't keep it from coming to a vote. The new congresswoman from Arizona will was the 218th person. The House has to convene. That's the only reason why it hasn't come up for a vote yet, is my understanding, which could be wrong, but I think that's right. So will the House vote to have the Epstein documents released? So this would be a big slap in the face to the felon. Granted, it's only taken 4 Republicans, I think. Only 4 Republicans have signed it, led by Massey from Kentucky, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene signed it. Not sure about the other 2. I think I know, but I'm not quite sure. Okay. Will this happen? And then we'll look at Vance becoming toxic, and then we'll look at, is this the beginning of the end? Or is this closer to the middle of the end, is probably more accurate, of the felon's era. Here's the felon in his own reading, the King of Pentacles. We get surprises, new beginnings, emotional ones in the environment around. I'm not sure if Nancy Mace was one of the ones signing the petition. I don't think she was, but she claimed to be just moved by the victim's testimony behind closed doors. We get betrayal, the Three of Swords. So, that um, I think says it all. I think he's going to feel betrayed. We get the Ace of Wands too, new leadership. I think if Mike Johnson were to fail to bring this up, I think they would throw him out. I really do. And not just the four that signed the discharge papers, but there'd be others that join him because that's the rules of the House. And they claim to be principled, which I don't know that they are, but on this one, I think they might actually do it. So I think he will bring it up for a vote. Yeah, messages coming forward, the Page of Pentacles, and we get lost, the Five of Cups. I'm sorry, the Four of Cups. We get, this apathetic feeling, and we get the Two of Swords, blind choices, having to make a choice. And we get the Chariot card, which, if you remember when we were reading about Epstein a lot, the Chariot card is about traffic, hence trafficking, hence why I associate it with that. Well, that's not actually what it's about. That's just what it reminds me of, so that's why I associate it with. Um, and we get anxiety. So the felon's very scared that these things are going to come out. It's giving him anxiety. Republicans will have to make a choice. They know it'll send a message, and that might later lead to some betrayal. I mean, they're already trying to primary Thomas Massie in Kentucky. They're trying to primary a bunch of Republicans, which is why the Democrats will win some pretty Republican districts in the House in 26. We get new beginnings, a new way of leadership, if not new leadership, but definitely a newfound passion and independence. Uh, you know, kind of sticking it to the felon. Why? Because the public wants this. The public wants these things released. The public wants people that are guilty of the chariot card actions to be prosecuted. You know, there's a lot of juggling going on. Here's the Five of Cups, which is about loss, and the Five of Swords, which is about being wounded in battle. So really, it couldn't be any more clear that this is going to go poorly for the felon here. So I do think the vote happens and it passes to release them. I don't know that the DOJ complies, by the way, because that's a different story. Um, I think eventually they do, but they might delay it quite a bit. So, okay, so Vance becomes toxic, and then we'll look at, is this the end of this era? Does Vance become toxic? I think he kind of goes down with the ship, so to speak. Now, no, that doesn't mean that he doesn't become president because he does, but it just means he'll be ineffective. Now Peter Thiel and Steve Bannon and Elon Musk, which are on the Epstein list, this come out. All of this is what I said way back in February. I said they all were involved. Um, Especially Musk. Musk, I think, was involved to get blackmail, but for entertainment purposes only. I could be right. I could be wrong. Okay. Does Vance become toxic? I think Republicans know the midterms are going to go so badly that, yeah, there's volatility. Things coming out about Vance too. I think that make him look bad. He just elicits a lot of arguments amongst Republicans later on after he takes over. I think this is because of the lack of consistency. I think we'll find, people coming forward that will basically say that, you know, he is a hypocrite. Deceit, deception, dishonesty, some ethics violations as well. And, I mean, it is justice for him for this to not go well for him. And again, families, reunions, celebrations at the center of the reading. This is kind of what the astrology suggests too, is that there's going to be more of a focus on family, um, and on just healing is what it feels like to me. Now I'm not an astrologer, but that's my take on the energies and the one person that I listen to that I trust who's not on YouTube, but I just know personally. Um, and we get the voters turning on him as well. And legacies, the Ten of Pentacles. All these tens are ends of cycles as well, right? So that's what we're talking about is the end of an era. And the truth coming out about him. And I think it does take a Democrat to point it all out. So, I think things come to the surface which offend us as a group of people, as members of a cohort or a family. And I think it does take a Democrat to point out some of this stuff. We get legacy, families and reunions, and we get deceit. His legacy is basically going to be deceit and deception. There'll be a lot of fighting over him because the truth comes out, and the voters will want justice, and the voters will hand it down in their verdict with their vote in 26. Underneath, whoops, underneath, yeah, circles of support, and the lovers cards of choices. And things move quite swiftly with the Knight of Wands. I don't think he's president long before he's basically becomes impotent, for the lack of a better word. Ineffective probably would have been a better choice. Okay, so is this the end of are we in the midst of the end of the Trump era? So the Sun card here is definitely a big yes card. And the Five of Swords, Dementia. And we're talking about Epstein, the Chariot card, and messages coming forward around money. The Knight of Pentacles. Is this the end of the Trump era? Are we in the middle of, are we in the midst of, let's get that way. Are we in the midst of the end of the felons era? Are we in the midst of that? And not just him personally, but the ideas that go along with the mob mentality. The Jimmy Kimmel sketch with Robert De Niro was pretty hilarious, where Robert De Niro played the head of the FCC. You haven't seen that? Maybe you want to check it out. I think we're done. Now, I know us on this channel, we are done, but I think other people are done too. I don't live in the most liberal part of the country, but people here, they're done. I've gone into the grocery store a few times and people are just kind of done. They feel like they can't afford things. Although, I don't think that's entirely accurate as one person told me. It just feels like there's more to worry about, like getting a child a car when they go off to college is like outrageously expensive. Things like that. Yeah. His circles of support, so Putin, Netanyahu, and the felon, I think they all go at the same time. Like, I think they all fall together, right? Like dominoes. I've talked about that before. I think their lives end at similar times as well, but I think their eras end. Everything's pointing to the same thing, the Eight of Wands. And we get Democrats in the upper right. People are going to start to turn to the Democrats because they're a voice of reason, because they're not talking about absurd stuff. Um, yeah, new financial realities. People are realizing these tariffs are hurting them. People are tired of not being able to keep up with what's going on in the country. It's so hard to keep up with the chaos. Boring is good. I think we're tired of the illusion and delusion, the pretending that the things coming out of his mouth make sense. People are tired of that. things are coming to the surface. There's a lot of volatility right now. We have things going on behind the scenes that we can't see. These are neighbors talking to neighbors about their economic problems, their economic worries. Um, there's a lot going on in the country, and we get this new beginning. So yeah, things are coming to an end. So I think the big three, Putin, Netanyahu, and the felon, their heirs all come to the end around the same time. People are tired of not being able to keep up with what's going on. They're looking for something new. The volatility is driving people crazy because they can't keep up, and they're going to turn to the Democrats, at least in 26, and that's the beginning of the end of it. Not the beginning. We're in the midst of the end, but that's like kind of like the voters saying, "Yeah, we're done with this." Everything's pointing in that direction. People are tired of trying to pretend that the things he says make sense. I mean, the man can barely form a sentence, and people are pretending like he's a profound thinker. It's bizarre. There are things going on behind the scenes here helping us out as well. And people are tired of worrying about money, this new financial reality with the tariffs that we're all in. People want stability. They want people they can look up to, role models for their children. Um, and then we get the Ten of Pentacles, the inheritance card, the legacy, but also the end of a cycle. And then we get Temperance, which of course is the card that comes after the Death card in the tarot. And that's when people really turn away from the era. So when he goes, the era goes, is basically the way I see it. And I think it starts to go before he goes, but he's not going to be around much longer. And then things are over. So all right. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with another video soon.